Good morning, and today we're going to talk about concepts and techniques of library science, or how library science can help improve your life and the lives of your customers. For the most part, when I'm talking about library science, and today and in the last session and in the next one, I'm talking about finding content in your repository for you and your writers. I'm not necessarily talking about how you make your stuff work for them, right? If you're doing data, you have hundreds of thousands of topics very, very quickly. And you need to be able to find those topics to build the book, or put in the information in the right spot in the online help or wherever it goes, so that your customer can find it right away and use it. Right? This is the promise of XML publishing. This is the whole idea behind all of it, is to make our reuse as high as possible so we get consistency, accurate information for our customers. So everything we do here, which improves our own ability to find and reuse content, you can use all of these same techniques to then go through your content and make it better for your customers as well, so that their indexes are better, their table of contents are better, that when they search, they actually find the things that they're looking for. But it's the same process, but a different audience. And so right now I'm talking about you being able to find stuff in that repository of content so that you can build the books for them. And it's a kind of strange thing to think about, but it's extremely useful, and will help you make things better for them. Just a little bit of warning, this is part 2. We did part 1 in July. We're going to do part 3 in September. It's usually a 60 or 90-minute presentation that precedes a 2-day workshop. We broke it into 3 parts. If you have questions or things you want to talk about, please bring them to part 3, and we will deal with your questions in your situation. Because it's really a workshop for us. It's not something that you just lecture on, because it's hard to get your head around it, especially when you're trying to think about how do you yourself search for content. How do you know where things are? How do you find something? If you were going to win the lottery tomorrow and go to Fiji for a month and someone came over to take over your job, how would they be able to find the things they needed to do to complete the job to get things into the hands of customers? So, all of that said, we're in part 2. Hopefully you saw part 1. It was on YouTube. All of the TC Dojo presentations go onto YouTube. This one will be up in a couple of days, certainly. All right, so just a little refresh from the last session. We talked about starting with access points. Access points are anything you use as a way or direction or axis, a way to fetch a certain piece of information. Access points can be anything. Search terms, phrases, a date, a title, an author, a company, a subject, a product number. It can be any kind of specific information that gets you a way to fetch the thing you're looking for, right? So you start with access points, and then you add the notion of scope. Scope gives you a way to break data up so that you can not only just fetch one thing in one way, but you have ways to either expand that search or narrow it to get you what you want. So it's a way to break data up in other ways, like children's materials or children's fiction or Spanish nonfiction, right? It doesn't really matter necessarily what your bucket is. Scope is just giving you buckets so that your access point says, I want to look for all the materials that are books. I want all those books that are Spanish fiction, right? So you've got 3 different ways of bucketing out what information you want and getting at it, really. It doesn't really matter, again, what that bucket is, just that you have one and that it's a bucket you use regularly. Our example was the one of the fridge. We had the left-hand side, which looks like it's organized by shopping trip, right? Different bags represent different stores. You get different things in different stores. That's how it's organized. On the right, it maybe is organized by usage. They get beer and soda a lot, so it's on the top. The soda in the box, which they empty and fill into the top as individual cans, it's on the bottom because it's not accessed regularly. It could be organized any number of ways. I mentioned I have a customer who likes to organize his fridge by height. He doesn't want to see a butter dish on the same shelf that the milk is on, right? Because this butter dish should be on a small, thin, narrow shelf, not on a big shelf where you can put other things like wine bottles. It doesn't matter how you organize. It matters that your organizing principle matters to you and to your information and to the audience doing the searching, right? That's what matters. It doesn't matter if it's the official taxonomy that the biologists have approved and sanctioned and gotten international agreement on. This is how you classify a bug. It doesn't really matter if the bug's in your fridge and you care what shelf it's on, right? So organizing principles for information are about you, your information, your audience, your searchers. It's not necessarily anything else. It doesn't matter what it is as long as it matters to you. Okay, so now we're going to step back and talk a little bit more about the specific types of access points, what they are, and what they do for you. So there's 6 typical types of access points, and those are controlled vocabulary, keywords, numerical, time date, natural language, and combined searching. So when you're defining your access points, you want to make sure you have multiple ways of getting at something and that they work in concert with each other to let you expand your search or narrow it, right? It may be that you search for something that is, you're looking for ankle joints, right? And you want, is it okay if your search gives you everything about the ankle, or you need to filter and just get things that affect the joint, right? Maybe you searched for ankle joint, but the thing you wanted really was not marked as an ankle joint article. It really has more about ankles, not so much the joints. You want to expand your search and go out to all ankle articles, right? So you can either expand or contract based on your access points and scope, letting you do the 2 things together. So access points also let you leverage what you know about content to let you find it. What do you remember? So like, I remember I worked on this article last spring. I know it was last spring because I was up against doing something for my mom, and it was her birthday, and I was trying to get it finished. So I know that if I can bracket the work, the article I'm looking for by time, I know it was published in May or June, so I can find the thing that I want, right? So I not only can look for the ankle joint article, I want ankle joint articles that were modified last May or June. Right, so it gives me a way to slice and dice my search results to get something more close to exactly what it was I was looking for. Right, it's a ways, having more than one access point gives you a way to search when other methods of search aren't working. Right, we've all had that experience. We go to Google and I was searching for something for my bicycle. Actually, I have a K2 Trailwind. It's got a strange bicycle shape. The frame is weird, and I can't just attach a pannier onto the back. So I went looking for Trailwind bike, and what I got was a whole bunch of different articles talking about you need to have a good Trailwind to get you up or down the hill, right? And so the keyword was failing me, even though that was the name of the bicycle. So you have to have other ways of getting at that information, and the keyword is not always the only one that works. So let's talk about each one of these individual types, and we'll come back around to how they work together. So a lot of this is very basic and stuff that you know in different ways because you deal with this as index terms, as keywords, and other things when you're writing content for another audience. Controlled vocabulary is only defined, it's highly structured, it's a taxonomy, it specifies hierarchy of terms, and it specifies what terms are used to describe something for any piece of content in the library. So this is just like a terminology database when you're talking about your products or you're working with other things. Controlled vocabulary is exactly that, right? So one of the issues with controlled vocabulary is the story of the man whose secretary goes on vacation. She files things according to her own internal clock because she's the one who does all the filing. She's the one he asks to pull the file on so-and-so, and she knows where she filed it, how she filed it, and what her organizing principle for the file cabinets are. She goes on vacation and he can't find a thing because his controlled vocabulary is not the same as hers. It's not documented, it's not written down, it's not codified or anything else, so he has a hard time finding anything when she goes on vacation, right? So a controlled vocabulary tries to deal with that issue by laying out exactly what everybody should how people should file things, right? So for example, say you are trying to categorize, okay, my favorite sports team, my local team, they're the San Jose Sharks. Their colors are teal and white. If our organizing principles, our control vocabulary does not have the word teal, then it goes under blue. But I have to know that teal is blue. It's not always obvious necessarily that I should use blue and not teal, right? Or azure instead of blue. You kind of have to know these things, right? So on one hand, control vocabulary makes everyone look at the world the same way. It's very simple, it's not necessarily precise, and it has drawbacks that are not always obvious. That teal and white is my favorite example because, you know, do I want to go ahead and call out teal because it's important enough to differentiate it from just general blue, or is it not, right? And you kind of have to decide that in advance. You have to decide that as a group, and it's somebody who may not see that color as teal and say, oh, well, this is just blue, I'll put it as blue. You start to get things that are miscategorized or misfiled because it's not well known what the principles are, what the controlled vocabulary is. Okay, so card catalog in the library is also another example of a controlled vocabulary. I don't know how many people remember the card catalogs in your local elementary school library or whatever was way back when. We had 3 different sets of catalogs, little drawers with cards in them. There were author, title, and subject. So I could look for Nathaniel Hawthorne under whatever title of the book I was looking for, and it would cross-reference me to somewhere else. I could look up, you know, something historical. I want to look up Massachusetts. I can get somewhere else. I want to look up religion in Nigeria. I can either go through religion down to Nigeria and cross-reference in, or I can start in Nigeria and work my way down to religion. If you look at, so Dewey is kind of a disputed cataloging system now. Actually, it's been thought to be extremely US-centric. There's a different catalog notational structure used for the Library of Congress. There's a different notational structure used in Europe, which has a high following. Actually, it's really kind of interesting. But some of the stuff in Dewey is a good example. You can see here how it breaks down, right, and how you're building it. If you look at the left-hand side, it says built from table 1, built from table 2. It cross-references itself. So you can take 2 different hierarchies and blend them together, right? So Europe, Western Europe, England and Wales, Northwestern England and the Isle of Man, Lancaster, that is buried in this example under economics. But it's not that hierarchy doesn't just apply to economics. It applies to geography, it applies to politics, it applies to, you know, patterns and struggles and everything else. So it's not so much a single hierarchical structure, it's multiple structures that cross-reference into each other. And that's how the numbers are built in the Dewey Decimal System. So don't think that a controlled vocabulary is one single taxonomy, or that to get a good controlled vocabulary you have to do one single taxonomy, because you do run into this problem where you've got the same structure that appears under multiple hierarchies. So part of that is to think about things in multiple access points and multiple sets of controlled vocabularies and where they build together. Here's another sort of example of how that works out. One of the interesting ones that I happen to know actually is biography. The 900s is geography, biography, history. If you look at 992, you get individual biography. If you have a dot 92 in one of the other sets, so if you look at the first column, 00 general works, 0010 is bibliography, 0090 is manuscripts, and you'll start to get biographies under there again. So who's kind of a wacky genius, Dewey was, but it is very US-centric. So, but if you want to get an idea of how to put together a structure, just go look at not necessarily the books on the shelves, but the Dewey Decimal is actually a couple of volumes that you can look at, and you can see what the classification system really is. And it gives you an idea about how things structure and fit together and where you can build it. Here's an example of Dewey versus Chinese decimal classification systems, and you see that they change a little bit. 600 is technology for Dewey, but it's history and geography of China for CDC, right? Again, it doesn't matter what your bucket is, it matters that your bucket matters to your information. So here's a good place. You can play with this on the web. It's lexfn.com, Lexapro Freenet, and it shows you sort of how you can build your taxonomy out from other things. You can see where it's synonymous, or it's rhymes with, or it's antonym, or birth year, or who else it's with. I think I have an example of it up here. You can see chemistry is generalization of geochemistry. It is rhymes with biochemistry. It's an occupation of, I don't know who Josie Berzik is, but we could find it if we wanted to. You can see important chemists farther down the list. So it's a way to sort of look at, this is just more examples of ways to look at how you build taxonomies and how you find controlled language and how you can define it specifically for your use. And it helps to get a feel by looking at these things when you're designing yours. So what's the difference between controlled language and keywords? Well, keywords expand your access points and they're specific things. They mean very specific things. They don't have a taxonomy attached to them. And they allow you sort of to use natural language as part of your access point expansion. Here in the Bay Area, there's a large Filipino population, and they will come into the local library looking for books about Filipino, the Philippines. It can be spelled one of many ways. These are 3 examples. So if my database only includes the keyword Philippines spelled the first way, Philippines, then somebody who's looking for Filipino, the last one, won't find the books that are attached to that. So having keywords that are synonyms or alternate spellings or other ways of getting at the content can be very, very key if your audience is such that they're going to look for things under their own way of thinking about it, right? Keywords are not just your taxonomy, your official animal, kingdom, phylum, genus. It's not just that way, right? It has to be in tune with the person doing the searching. And so this is librarians in the Bay Area will typically add these other keywords when they're filing books that have a recommendation from the publisher as being Philippines. They'll regularly add 2 other keywords because they know their audience will look for them, right? So it can be controlled. It can be a little more natural language oriented. Keywords are more than just taxonomy, right? They are things that are words that your searchers use on a regular basis. So here's another way to go looking at these kinds of things. Library of Congress, taxonomies like the National Library of Medicine, they've already got taxonomies built in. So if you're working with things that are, say, medical device, there's a whole IETF spec on classifications of types of warnings and precautions. And you can just use that. There's no reason to redefine that. If it's a standard that everybody uses, you're actually better off using the standard. If you have products or information that hit parts of these other taxonomies, absolutely you can use those. Pull their keywords, pull their controlled vocabularies. It's a lot less work for you, but there's some stuff that you will have to do that is specific to your information because nobody else is cataloging that. You are the catalogers. You are the librarians of your content. So keywords can give you some, this is the key here at the bottom too, you include terms that are likely to be used by your searchers. So this is why I say in the beginning it's a 2-pronged effort, right? The first is to catalog your content in your content repository for you, the writers who are writing and putting together books. You search for things differently than your customer searches for them. And what works for you may not work for them. So you do one exercise filling out your taxonomy and filling out your natural language and your keywords for you, and then you can do the exercise again when you're figuring out the taxonomy for them and you're deploying to your customer. Your audiences are different, your keywords are different, and your point of view is different, and it's very important that you make sure that you know who your audience is when you're constructing whichever vocabulary you happen to do. So if you want a really good chance to look at a video where they've talked about a real system, very robust and functioning system, you can go look at PubMed and the mesh vocabulary. These 3 videos, I'll publish these to the web when I post this to YouTube. These are really handy. These are really interesting. And you go try things out in PubMed because it's totally visible to the public. But they made a video about how they came up with their vocabulary, what they did, how they tested it before they even deployed it. And it's totally worth looking at if you're starting to think about putting your own vocabulary together. So other types of catalogs. Oh, I have my slide twice. I don't know how that happened. Oh, I'm going the wrong way. That's why. Okay, so here's another example. We all love my examples. Fridge was the best one. So China. Somebody comes to you and says, I'm looking for information about China. Do they mean the plates or the country? Right? If your vocabulary is controlled, you make sure your writers are tagging the dishes one way and the country another way, because the word itself is ambiguous. Right? And if your users are coming to do the search, you need to be able to make it so that when they type in China, they say, well, you get the clarifying choice of which way do you mean to go, right? Do you mean, are you talking about this or are you talking about this? So the other example, this is even better, this is a real one too, turkey. Are you looking for the country, the bird, or are you really looking for recipes for Thanksgiving, right? You don't know what the searcher is necessarily looking for when they say, I need things about turkey. Right? They might be looking for recipes for turkey or the country or just how is the bird, right? Okay, so we're coming close to the half hour and I want to tell you what's coming up next and give you a chance to write in your questions. We'll talk about the last few access points next month, and we'll talk about best practices for redefining and creating metadata values and thinking about these things. So that's the end of part 2. I'll let you guys type in your questions if you have them, and we'll take a look at what's coming up. So first, beginning of September, we'll do part 3 of library science. I've got the registration link at the bottom, and please make sure to vote for your choice of upcoming session topics. These are for you, they're not for us. We don't want to tell you what to learn, you can tell us. It's far more interesting and valuable to everyone. So be sure to vote for your choice of upcoming session topics down there at the SurveyMonkey link at the bottom. Also, in our next ArborText TC Dojo, we're going to talk about bringing reusability to style sheets. We go to XML so we can reuse our information. Well, in Styler, we do the same thing for our style sheets. We make property sets and we make reuse in our style sheets so we're not coding things up multiple times, and it's so much easier. Makes things uniform and easy to maintain. Again, session topics, vote for them at the bottom. Our next master series, grow your skills to become a dojo master. It doesn't matter what path you're on or what tools you're using or where you are in your journey. The master sessions are not webinars, they're virtual discussion groups. They're facilitated group discussions, and so you can bring your own projects, your own challenges, and get answers that apply to your situation when you need them the most. It's confidential, same group of people attend every month. There's a small fee for attending, and sign up today. It's been really, really fascinating and fun for everyone attending. All right, questions. Do we have any questions, Janice?
Don't see any.
I hope that I didn't go too quick or say anything not so fun, because I find this to be a really interesting subject, and the thing is it actually seems very obvious and very easy until you're in the middle of it and trying to figure it out for yourself. That's why it's a 2-day workshop. Usually the lights go on for everybody attending somewhere in the middle of the second day, and they make the shift to thinking as a cataloger and not as a writer or an author, and it's a weird shift to make. But you need to think about yourself as the reference librarian for your content and not the expert in that content, right? Librarians do not go learn how to be chemistry experts in order to file the chemistry book on the shelf for the people who are those experts and wanting to learn that stuff. So anyway, well, that's where we're at. The video will be posted to the TC Dojo YouTube channel. Join us next time and we'll see you then. Thanks, everybody.